I was certain the station was about to explode, and all I could think about was whether my tie would look dignified in the wreckage. The metallic groan that had rolled through the walls a heartbeat before the delegation arrived had been the kind of sound engineers swore couldn't happen, yet it did, rattling through the chamber like a death knell. I gripped the edge of the polished obsidian table, waiting for the alarms, for the vacuum breach, for the tragic footnote in history, first interstellar peace summit, lost to poor maintenance. But no alarm came. The groan dissipated, replaced by silence so heavy it pressed against my chest. And then the doors opened. They didn't so much slide apart as breathe, folding outward in strange petals of light, unveiling the Eleutheri ambassador and her entourage. I'd seen still images, half-corrupted transmissions, but nothing had prepared me for her. She walked as though gravity bent differently for her, tall, graceful, her hair falling like starlight braided through with silver cords. Her face was almost human, alarmingly human, except for the ears, long and elegant, swept upward in an arc that seemed to listen to more than sound. I had rehearsed a dozen greetings in 3 languages, 2 dialects, and 1 form of semaphore, but the moment her eyes met mine, my brain discarded every prepared syllable. She cried. No hesitation, no subtle moistening of the eyes, her tears welled instantly, streaming down her cheeks as though she had seen something unbearable, something intimate and devastating. The chamber froze. The Earth delegation stiffened in confusion, their polished uniforms crinkling in unison. Eleutheri aides twitched, their ears vibrating with unspoken signals. And me? I stood like a target on the firing range, wondering if I had just committed an interstellar insult by existing. I managed at last, my voice cracking against the silence. I swear I didn't say anything offensive yet. A ripple ran through the chamber, half confusion, half amusement. One of the human aides coughed into his hand. An Eleutheri flicked their ears in something that could have been outrage or sneezing. Celira, though I didn't yet know her name, covered her face briefly, the tears sliding between her fingers, and then looked back at me with a trembling sort of smile. It was not relief. It was not joy. It was recognition, and it terrified me. The first words out of my mouth should have been something historical. Something engraved later in textbooks and recited by schoolchildren. On this day, we join hands across the stars. Instead, I heard myself say, I should warn you, I have that effect on people. Usually takes at least one bad joke before the crying starts, though. The translator nodes hesitated, then rendered my words into her tongue. There was a pause, a sound like bells straining against wind, and then, she laughed. The sound was sharp, sudden, and wrong for the solemnity of the moment, but it shattered the tension like a glass dropped in a cathedral. The aides glanced at each other, unsettled. The journalists at the rear exchanged frantic hand signals, their cameras darting like insects. Somewhere, my superior officer put his face into his hands. She wiped her tears, but they kept coming, trailing down her cheeks as if a dam inside her had been split. Her voice reached me through the translators, soft but carrying. When I saw you, it felt as though I remembered losing you. I swallowed hard. My throat was dry, my palms damp. Losing me? We had never met. Unless you counted my embarrassing stint as a Space Academy dropout, though I doubted that was a cross-cultural broadcast. She stepped closer. Her guards flinched but did not stop her. The air around her shimmered faintly, like heat over asphalt, though the room was cold enough to bite. My chest felt tight, not with fear but with the absurd certainty that if she touched me, something irreversible would happen. Ambassador Wren, hissed my aide behind me, protocol. But protocol had already disintegrated. My tie was slightly askew, my heart battering my ribs like it wanted out, and the most powerful alien diplomat we'd ever met was crying because of me. So I did the only thing my panicked brain thought might salvage the situation. I bowed slightly, tried to smile, and said, well, it's a pleasure to meet you too. I hope I didn't leave the oven on in a past life. The translators rendered it. The Eleutheri aides twitched, baffled, and Selira blinked at me. Then, against all sense, she laughed again through her tears. The chamber was a storm of whispers, murmurs, frantic notes scribbled into datapads. Cameras blinked. Political careers reshaped themselves in real time. And me? I stood rooted, staring into eyes that seemed to know me far too well. Something had just begun, and I was utterly unprepared for it. I woke the next morning to 3 simultaneous crises, an inbox overflowing with encrypted diplomatic memos, a pounding headache that felt like my skull had been repurposed as a percussion instrument, and the disconcerting rumor that half the station now thought I had proposed marriage to the Eleutheri ambassador through prolonged eye contact. I didn't even like eye contact. It always felt like a staring contest where someone would eventually cry. Of course, this time, someone had cried, just not me. By the time I staggered into the briefing room, every member of the Earth delegation was staring daggers at me. Commander Valen, the kind of man who shaved so aggressively he looked permanently sandblasted, was already pacing. "You've managed to derail half a century of preparation in 5 seconds, he barked. I raised a hand weakly. Technically, it was closer to 4. She cried almost immediately. Efficiency, if you think about it. The silence that followed could have frozen plasma. My aide, Clara, buried her face in her tablet, no doubt composing the obituary of my career. "Do you understand what you've done?" Valen continued, his voice rising. "Every news outlet is broadcasting that the Eleutheri ambassador wept at the sight of you. You've become," he checked his notes with disgust, "a meme." That woke me up. Already? It hasn't even been 12 hours. Someone looped the footage and added subtitles. They call it Cry-Fi. It's trending on 4 planets. Clara risked a glance at me, her lips twitching. I leaned back in my chair, pretending calm. Well, at least history will remember me. Not for peace, not for diplomacy, but as a walking emotional trigger. Another aide whispered, "To be fair, Ambassador Wren, your eyebrows are rather expressive." They may have startled her. That earned him a glare from me, though it wasn't entirely undeserved. My eyebrows had been compared to swooping comets once. Not my fault. The meeting dragged on with endless speculation. Was it a cultural gesture? A physiological reaction? A subtle insult hidden in Eleutheri biology? I wanted to suggest it was just because I'm devastatingly handsome, but I had a strong survival instinct. Eventually, Clara pulled me aside as the others muttered themselves into a spiral of paranoia. "You need to meet her again," she said, lowering her voice. "Privately, if possible. Find out what this actually means before the council decides you're a liability and replaces you with someone less tear-inducing." I groaned. So my punishment for causing emotional chaos is, to cause more emotional chaos? Think of it as, investigative chaos. I couldn't argue. Later that day, I found myself escorted into an Eleutheri wing of the station. The architecture shifted as though alive, walls curving like frozen waves, faint lights pulsing in patterns that seemed responsive to my heartbeat. It was beautiful, in a way that made me feel like a clumsy ink blot on a masterpiece. Selira was waiting. No guards this time, only her. She looked composed, though her eyes still carried the faint shimmer of someone who had been crying not long ago. "Ambassador Wren," she said, her voice like glass chimes. "Please," I said quickly, "call me Marcus. If we keep this formal, I'll faint under the weight of my own titles." Her lips curved slightly. "Marcus, then." For a heartbeat, silence stretched between us, thick with something unsaid. I fiddled with the cuff of my jacket. "So, about yesterday. I just want to clarify, I didn't, accidentally insult your people by existing, did I? Because if that's the case, humanity really doesn't have a backup plan." Her laugh was soft, a ripple against the strange humming walls. "No insult. Your presence, it was overwhelming. As though I had lost you long before meeting you." That did nothing to calm my nerves. I rubbed my temples. Right. So I made you cry because I remind you of someone you lost. I mean, I get that a lot at family reunions, but usually after I've told a bad joke. She tilted her head, studying me with unnerving intensity. The Eleftheri do not cry lightly. Our tears are memory. They carry echoes of what we have lived, what we have lost. You awoke something ancient in me. Something I cannot name. I froze. That sounds very profound. And terrifying. Also a little like the start of a bad romance hollow. Her ears twitched, delicately, elegantly, as though picking up frequencies in my sarcasm. Then she smiled. Perhaps. Yet I laughed, did I not? That is rare, too. We sat across from each other, the room humming softly around us. I tried to ignore the knot in my stomach. This was supposed to be diplomacy, not a therapy session. But I found myself blurting out, if this connection between us is real, maybe it means something. Maybe I stopped, realizing I sounded like a starry-eyed poet. Maybe it's a cosmic joke. The universe saw me, thought, this man should not be taken seriously, and gave him the ability to make alien ambassadors cry on sight. To my surprise, she laughed again, covering her mouth with one elegant hand. Her laughter was warmer this time, less broken, and for a moment I felt less like a disaster and more like something useful. But then her expression sobered, and her gaze pinned me. Marcus, this bond is dangerous. My people will not understand. Yours will fear. We must tread carefully. I nodded, though my brain whispered, I can't even tread carefully on a flat floor, how am I supposed to navigate interspecies destiny? Still, I managed a shaky grin. Well, good news. If either side tries to replace us, we can always run away and start a comedy act. The Diplomat and the Elf-Eared Woman. I hear orbital cabarets are popular. Her ears flicked again, and though her smile was small, it was real. And for the first time, the tears in her eyes looked a little less like grief, and a little more like possibility. The Eleftheri vessel did not have doors. At least, not in the sense I understood them. Instead of panels that slid open with a reassuring whoosh, the walls simply peeled away, like the ship was embarrassed about keeping me out. I stepped into the chamber cautiously, half expecting the wall to change its mind and clap shut on me like a hungry clam. Celira was already there, seated at a table that looked suspiciously alive. Its surface rippled faintly, and I swore I heard it sigh when I touched it. Your ship, I said carefully, is judging me. Her ears twitched in amusement. It responds to resonance. You are unfamiliar. It is curious about you. I'd rather it be indifferent. Curiosity in furniture rarely ends well for me. I once sat on a chair that collapsed under me during a peace summit. The entire Zether delegation applauded. She tilted her head. Perhaps they admired your flexibility. They admired my screaming. The table stilled beneath my hand, as though listening to our exchange. I pulled my fingers back, just in case it decided to absorb me out of boredom. We were alone, no guards, no aides, no audience. It should have felt liberating, but instead I felt naked without the buffer of witnesses. Her eyes followed me, patient, as though waiting for me to say something of substance. Unfortunately, my brain specialized in nonsense. So, I began, clearing my throat, yesterday you said I awakened something ancient in you. Just so we're clear, that wasn't some Eleftheri way of telling me I smell bad, right? Her lips curved faintly. If you smelled offensive, I would not be here. That's reassuring. Though my deodorant company will be thrilled to know it now supports interstellar relations. Her laughter was soft, but it loosened the tight coil in my chest. Then her gaze grew serious again. Marcus, I have spoken with our scientists. They believe our connection is not an accident. Eleftheri resonance is delicate. It should not extend across species. And yet, with you, it does. I shifted uneasily. And by resonance, you mean? She touched her chest, just over her heart. Emotion. Memory. Echoes of the self. Our ears perceive more than sound, they perceive currents of thought, pulses of memory. When I saw you, those currents overwhelmed me. I remembered grief that was not mine. I stared at her, trying to process that. My instinct was to joke, but the weight in her tone made me hesitate. Still, old habits die hard. So basically, my face is a universal grief trigger. That tracks. Babies cry when they see me too. Her ears twitched, and this time she did not hide her smile. You twist pain into humor. A survival strategy. Some people drink. I make bad jokes. Same result, fewer hangovers. The table pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. I ignored it, focusing on her. What does this mean for us? For the talks. She hesitated. It means we are being studied. Quietly. My scientists, your superiors, they will want to know what this bond is. Whether it can be used. Or whether it is dangerous. Great, I muttered. So we're either weapons or lab rats. Classic choices. Her eyes softened. I do not want that for you. And I don't want it for you, I admitted, surprising myself with the honesty. But between you and me, I'm not exactly known for subtlety. If I'm supposed to keep this secret, we're in trouble. Then perhaps, she said slowly, we should shape the story before others shape it for us. I blinked. Are you suggesting we lie? She gave me a look that was far too elegant to be called mischievous, but it was close. Diplomats call it, framing. I chuckled. Ah yes. The fine art of telling the truth while making it sound like a joke. I'm a natural, apparently. For a moment, the weight lifted between us, replaced by something almost comfortable. I found myself leaning forward. So, what exactly do Eleutheri do for fun, when they're not making humans question their sanity? Her ears flicked. We glide the ion storms around our world ships. The currents carry us like rivers of light. That sounds incredible, I admitted, then added, although in my case, I'd probably crash into a lightning bolt and become the galaxy's first roasted diplomat. She laughed again, and the sound seemed to make the walls brighten. Then, almost reluctantly, she said, and you? What do humans do for joy? I thought of Earth, of oceans and cities, of 1,000 ordinary pleasures that seemed absurd to explain in this moment. I settled on, we argue about pizza toppings. Her brow furrowed delicately. Toppings? Yeah. Some people insist pineapple belongs on pizza. Others believe it's a crime against nature. Wars have nearly started over less. She stared at me for a long moment, then shook her head, ears trembling with amusement. Your species confuses me. Join the club, I said with a grin. We confuse ourselves daily. The silence that followed was softer, less suffocating. But beneath it, the truth lingered, we were entangled in something larger than either of us, something neither side was prepared for. And though I joked, though she laughed, the weight of that bond pressed closer with every word. When I finally rose to leave, the wall peeled back obligingly, sighing again. I glanced at it warily. If that thing starts writing poetry about me, I muttered, I'm transferring back to Earth. I caught her smile as I stepped through, and it followed me long after the wall closed behind me. The Eleutheri Council chamber felt like it had been designed by someone who thought, intimidating, and, mildly terrifying, were the same thing. The walls shimmered with a translucent sheen that pulsed in time with the council members' heartbeats, which meant I could see the rhythm of their disapproval every time I opened my mouth. I was trying very hard not to pass out. Selira stood at my side, calm, dignified, glowing in that infuriating way people do when they know they belong somewhere. I, meanwhile, was sweating through my uniform and imagining the headlines: Terran diplomat drowns in own sweat during peace talks. One of the Eleutheri elders leaned forward, his ears arching high like twin antennae tuned to my deepest insecurities. Ambassador Wren. You and Salira share a resonance that defies our science. How do you explain this? I cleared my throat. Well. Maybe it's destiny. Or maybe the universe just has a weird sense of humor. The translator nodes chirped, and a ripple of puzzled ear flicks traveled around the chamber. The elder frowned. The universe does not laugh. Clearly, I muttered, you've never watched human cooking shows. Salira's mouth twitched, the faintest hint of a smile. Encouraged, I pressed on. Look, I can't explain why she cried when she saw me. People have been crying when they see me since kindergarten. I thought it was my haircut. Turns out it's cosmic resonance. Go figure. A few of the younger Eleutheri actually let out soft chiming laughs. The elders silenced them with a glare, but I noticed the laughter mattered. It shifted the air, loosened the tension. Humor was contagious, even across species. Still, the elder's voice cut like a blade. This bond could endanger our negotiations. It makes you unpredictable. It makes her vulnerable. Before I could come up with another ill-timed joke, Salira stepped forward. I am not vulnerable, she said firmly. Resonance is not weakness. It is connection. And connection is why we are here. Her voice rang through the chamber like glass struck clean. For a moment, even the walls seemed to hum in agreement. I looked at her, startled by the fire in her tone. She glanced at me briefly, and in her eyes I caught the flicker of something both fierce and fragile. The council adjourned without resolution, their shimmering walls dimming as they filed out. I exhaled, shoulders sagging. Well, I muttered, that went better than expected. Nobody threw me out an airlock. Salira tilted her head. Is that a common outcome in your diplomacy? More common than I'd like. We walked back through the Eleutheri corridors, walls shifting subtly around us. I noticed how they seemed to brighten when she passed, then dim slightly when I followed. Your ship still doesn't like me, I grumbled. It does, she said with quiet amusement. It is simply cautious. You are loud. I didn't even say anything. Not your words. Your presence. She tapped her ear lightly. You resonate like thunder. I blinked. I've been called obnoxious before, but thunder. That's new. Her laughter was soft but real, echoing faintly in the humming hall. We stopped at a balcony that overlooked the station's docking ring. Beyond the transparent barrier, I could see ships sliding gracefully in and out, trails of blue light curling behind them like ribbons. For a moment, the sight stole my words. Salira's voice was quieter now. They fear what we share. But I do not. I swallowed, suddenly aware of how close we stood. For the record, I don't either. Terrified? Absolutely. But not afraid of you. Her ears flicked delicately, a gesture I was starting to read as pleased surprise. Then, inevitably, my communicator buzzed. Clara's voice, sharp and urgent, Marcus, report to human quarters immediately. There's been an incident. My stomach sank. What kind of incident? Someone sabotaged the gravitic core. Power fluctuations across the station. Both sides are pointing fingers. I closed my eyes, groaned, and muttered, of course. Nothing says peace summit like imminent structural collapse. Salira's expression hardened, her tears nowhere in sight now. We must go. Together we hurried through the shifting corridors. As we moved, I caught glimpses of Eleutheri citizens watching us, curious, wary, whispering behind flickering ears. Some looked at me with suspicion, others with something closer to wonder. We reached the human wing, where alarms blinked angrily in crimson. Clara intercepted us, her face pale. Systems are stabilizing for now, but if the core goes, half the station tears apart. She glanced nervously at Celira. And the Eleutheri think it was us. Celira met my eyes, calm despite the chaos. Or perhaps it was neither. Perhaps someone does not wish for peace. I nodded grimly. Well, whoever it is, they picked the wrong week. I've just started making progress on convincing your people I'm not a universal hazard. Her lips curved faintly, even in the crisis. Then perhaps you should prove it now. I sighed. Figures. Save the station, salvage interspecies trust, try not to trip over my own feet in the process. No pressure. But even as I joked, the truth sank in. This wasn't just about us anymore. If we didn't figure out who was behind the sabotage, our resonance, whatever it was, might be the only thing keeping two civilizations from tearing each other apart. And I was very afraid I wasn't qualified for that job. The corridor was tilted at just the wrong angle for running. Gravity flickered like a faulty light bulb, tugging me up 1 second and pressing me down the next. I stumbled forward, catching myself on the wall. It rippled beneath my palm, offended at my clumsiness. Eleutheri architecture really didn't appreciate human panic. Marcus, Clara barked through the comm, her voice crackling, core readings are unstable. If the field collapses, the docking ring will shear apart. Understood, I panted, trying not to throw up as the floor tilted 90 degrees and then politely corrected itself. But just so you know, if I die in here, I expect my obituary to mention how well I tried to run. Celira moved like gravity itself was her ally. Her long ears twitched with every shift, and her steps flowed across the unstable floor while I lurched after her like a drunk in a trampoline park. She didn't even look winded. This is sabotage, she said firmly, her voice steady despite the chaos. No system fails in this pattern by chance. I grunted. So someone wanted us pancaked into the walls. Or wanted our people to blame each other. She had a point. It was the oldest political trick in the book: stir suspicion, step back, and watch the negotiations implode. We reached the gravitic control chamber. Its entrance looked like a mouth frozen mid-scream, and for once I was glad the walls didn't talk. Inside, the air shimmered with energy, and the core itself pulsed erratically, like a beating heart trying to remember its rhythm. Two figures floated in the flickering half-gravity. One was an Eleutheri technician, wide-eyed and clinging to a railing. The other was a human security officer spinning helplessly in midair, shouting a string of curses that, in the translation nodes, came out as, "By the stars, may my socks combust." I lunged forward, caught his boot, and yanked him toward the railing. "Hang on, Johnson. If you die by suffocating in your own spin cycle, I'll never hear the end of it." He groaned, grabbing the railing. "I hate this station. Why couldn't they build the summit somewhere normal? Like Mars. Mars has sand. Sand doesn't betray you with fluctuating gravity." Celira ignored us both, gliding toward the core interface. Her hands hovered over the console, which pulsed faintly in recognition. The light steadied under her touch, as if soothed. She glanced back at me. "The sabotage is layered into the resonance patterns. It was designed to destabilize when humans accessed it." "That's convenient," I muttered. "Blame us with built-in programming." "Subtle." Clara's voice snapped in again. "Marcus, can you identify the saboteur?" I looked around the chamber, spotted an access hatch slightly ajar. My stomach tightened. "Maybe." "Celira, can you keep the core stable?" Her eyes locked on mine. "Only for a short time." "Great. Short time is my specialty." I pushed off the railing, floating toward the hatch. My trajectory was less heroic leap and more flailing chicken, but I managed to crash into the panel and yank it open. Inside, tangled among the wires, was a small device blinking maliciously. Definitely not standard equipment. I muttered a curse and pulled it free. The thing was sleek, elithary in design, but not quite. There were modifications. Someone had gone out of their way to blend two technologies. Which meant neither side could be innocent. The device vibrated in my grip, then emitted a sharp tone. I yelped, tossed it into the chamber's containment field, and watched it dissolve into harmless static. My heart hammered. Note to self, stop touching glowing alien bombs. Johnson wheezed. Good note. Celira steadied the controls, her expression calm but her ears trembling. The resonance stabilizes. For now. The technician exhaled shakily, muttering in elithary tones that translated as, by the spirals, I nearly voided my dignity. I floated back toward the railing, catching it with both hands and hauling myself down. Sweat dripped into my eyes. So someone planted tech designed to pit us against each other. Which means we're officially pawns in a game we don't even know the rules to. Celira's gaze lingered on me, thoughtful. And yet you disarmed it with humor. I screamed and threw it into a force field. And then you joked, she corrected. That matters. Clara's voice broke in again, sharper this time. Marcus, command wants answers. Who do we blame? I glanced at Celira. She stared back, unreadable but steady. Tell them, I said into the comm, that if they want someone to blame, they should start with whoever thought holding peace talks on a station made of living walls was a good idea. There was silence on the other end, followed by Clara's resigned sigh. You're impossible. Yeah, I said, leaning back against the railing, but at least I'm consistently impossible. Celira's laughter was soft, but it echoed in the humming chamber, and for one brief moment, it felt like the station itself was laughing with her. Of course, that was probably just another structural groan. But I chose to believe otherwise. The elithary worldship loomed outside the station like a living moon, its surface glittering with rivers of light that shifted as if they were alive. I tried not to stare as our shuttle approached, but it was difficult not to gape when the vessel in front of me looked like someone had wrapped an entire ecosystem around a star and then given it engines. Celira sat across from me in the shuttle cabin, calm as ever, while I clutched the armrest like it owed me money. You've done this before, I said, my voice embarrassingly tight. She tilted her head. Many times. And no one ever gets eaten by, whatever that is. I gestured at the ship, which at that moment rippled as though a school of fish was passing beneath its surface. Her ears flicked with amusement. It does not eat. That's not a denial about the fish. Her smile widened slightly, and I realized she enjoyed letting me dangle on the hook of my own paranoia. I sighed and leaned back, muttering, if I die in there, please tell the humans I went bravely. Or at least stylishly. When we docked, the airlock peeled open like the petals of some giant metallic flower. The air that rushed in was warmer, faintly perfumed, almost sweet. The corridor beyond pulsed with veins of glowing energy, as though the ship's heartbeat was guiding us inward. Marcus, Celira said quietly as we stepped inside, the elders have agreed to let you experience our memory sharing. It is a rare honor. Few outside our species are permitted. My stomach tightened. Memory sharing? Sounds intense. I should warn you, most of my childhood memories involve falling off bicycles. And also a deeply humiliating incident with a birthday cake. She gave me a look I couldn't quite read. The process is selective. What you see will not be accidental. Oh good, I said weakly. So only my worst moments will be on display. Perfect. The chamber we entered was round, vast, and filled with strands of light hanging from the ceiling like luminous vines. Each strand pulsed faintly, and when Celira touched one, it vibrated with a sound like distant bells. She gestured for me to stand opposite her. Place your hand here, she instructed, indicating a glowing column of light at the center. I obeyed cautiously, half expecting to get electrocuted. Instead, warmth surged through my fingers, crawling up my arm and settling in my chest. The air thickened, shimmering. And then, visions. I saw stars swirling, collapsing, rebirthing in endless cycles. I saw elethary children gliding through ion storms like dancers of light. I saw sorrow, a fleet drifting silent after a great loss, ears bent low, tears crystallizing in zero gravity. And woven through it all was Selira herself, laughing, grieving, living across years that stretched longer than I could comprehend. The connection deepened. Suddenly, my memories spilled into the light. I panicked, trying to hold them back, but they poured through, my father teaching me to tie a tie badly, my first failed attempt at diplomacy where I accidentally burped into the microphone, my childhood obsession with comic books about space heroes who never had sweaty palms like mine. Selira's ears trembled, her eyes wet, but she smiled. You are lighter than us. And heavier. You carry shame as though it is a companion. And yet you laugh. I swallowed, throat tight. And you carry entire centuries in your tears. The light between us pulsed, and for a dizzying second, I felt our bond like a tether in my bones. Not just recognition, but belonging. Terrifying, exhilarating, inevitable. Then the chamber dimmed, releasing us. I staggered, gripping my knees, while she remained upright, though her breath was quick. Well, I gasped, that was intense. I mean, most first dates just involve awkward small talk and maybe pizza. Her head tilted. This was not a date. Right, I said quickly. Of course. Just, sharing souls in an ancient elethary ritual. Totally platonic. Her laughter was soft, but it carried. The moment should have been calming, but a sharp chime interrupted us. The chamber's strands of light quivered in alarm. Selira stiffened. There is unrest in the council hall. Of course there is, I muttered, straightening. Because why let me enjoy a mystical soul-bonding experience when we could have another crisis? We hurried out of the chamber. The corridors shifted faster than before, as though the ship itself was agitated. Elethary voices rang ahead, urgent and sharp. When we reached the hall, we found the elders in uproar, their ears flicking furiously. One of them turned to us, his voice cutting like steel, the sabotage was human. We have found evidence in your systems. This alliance is a lie. Dozens of eyes turned on me. Suspicion, anger, fear, all aimed squarely at my very sweaty face. I raised both hands. Now, wait a second. I can't even operate my own coffee machine without breaking it. Do you really think I could sabotage an interstellar gravitic core? A few elethary ears twitched uncertainly, but most of them looked ready to exile me into a black hole. Selira stepped forward, her voice strong. No. I have seen his memories. He is clumsy, reckless, foolish at times. Wow, I muttered, thank you for the glowing review. But not a saboteur. If he is guilty of anything, it is of tripping over his own destiny. The hall rippled with murmurs. I stood beside her, wishing desperately for a pizza slice to make the situation less horrifying. And beneath the weight of their stares, I couldn't shake the feeling that our bond had just become more dangerous than ever. The council chamber was not designed for shouting matches, but that didn't stop it from turning into one. Elethary elders hissed sharp syllables that the translator struggled to render, spitting out phrases like structural betrayal and thread severed. A few even pointed accusing fingers, long, graceful, and terrifyingly sharp, straight at me. I raised my hand slowly, as though the wrong movement might get me dissolved into stardust. Look, I get it. You found some human tech in the sabotage. That looks bad. But in my defense, I'm barely qualified to fix a toaster. And even then, the toast usually comes out like charcoal. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Selira stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. The device we found was hybridized. Human, yes, but altered with elethary resonance. It was designed to cast suspicion on both our species. An elder with silver-threaded ears hissed. And how convenient that you would defend the human after exposing your thoughts to him in the memory chamber. Celira's jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch. I leaned toward her and muttered, "Wow, they really know how to phrase things so I feel like a home-wrecking raccoon." Her lips twitched. "Do not joke now." "Sorry," I whispered, "it's a compulsion." Like hiccups. The debate spiraled. Some elders argued for immediate severing of negotiations, others urged caution. Meanwhile, the walls of the chamber pulsed with faint red light, as if the world ship itself was eavesdropping, and didn't like what it was hearing. Suddenly, a chime cut through the shouting. The light strands woven into the ceiling flared, and an image appeared, footage from the sabotage chamber. A cloaked figure moved through the shadows, planting the device. The resolution sharpened, ears visible, movement smooth, but features concealed. The elders gasped. I squinted. Well, at least it's not me. Unless I've started sneaking around at night in a cloak, in which case, wow, I've gotten way cooler without noticing. The image froze. Someone shouted, "That is elethary form." Another hissed, "The movements are too rigid." "That is human posture." Accusations flew again, but this time suspicion cut both ways. I leaned back against a glowing pillar, sighing. Nothing says peace summit like a good old-fashioned whodunit mystery. We should have brought popcorn. Celira gave me a sharp look, but I caught the faintest flicker of amusement in her eyes. Clara's voice pinged through my comms suddenly. "Marcus. Are you still alive in there?" "Define alive," I muttered. "My dignity's been murdered several times, but otherwise yes." "Stay sharp," she said. "Intelligence reports indicate third-party interference. Neither side may be behind this." I straightened. "You mean there's a mystery guest at our little peace party?" "Exactly. And they don't want the summit to succeed." I glanced at Celira, who seemed to have caught the gist through my expression alone. She gave the tiniest nod. The council debate raged on, but she slipped closer to me and whispered, "If what your commander says is true, then both our species are victims. We must act before suspicion calcifies into war." "Right," I said, forcing a smile. "So, casual question, how do we sneak out of a chamber full of telepathically inclined alien politicians without them noticing?" Her ears angled slyly. "We distract them." "Let me guess," I said, "I'm the distraction." "Correct." Before I could protest, she stepped forward and raised her voice. "Elders. There is truth yet hidden, and I will find it." Dozens of eyes turned toward her. That was my cue. I ducked low, slid between two pillars, and scuttled toward the side corridor like a very undignified crab. A few elders shouted, but Celira's voice rose, commanding enough to pull their focus back. The corridor swallowed me, quieter but thrumming with energy. The ship's living walls seemed alive with tension, their glow shifting nervously. I whispered to myself, "Okay, Marcus. You're sneaking through an alien bioship that hates loud footsteps. Don't screw this up." Naturally, I tripped immediately. Catching myself against the wall, I winced as it pulsed indignantly under my palm. Sorry. I'll take my shoes off next time." Further down, I found Celira waiting. She'd slipped out while the council's attention was locked on her vow. "Effective distraction," she said calmly. "Glad my talent for humiliation has tactical applications," I muttered. We pressed on, deeper into the world ship's heart. The walls glowed brighter, as though guiding us, or warning us. Soon we reached a chamber filled with crystalline nodes, each humming with stored data. Celira approached one, her hand hovering just above its surface. "This is the record vault. If there is evidence of the true saboteur, it will be here." I scratched my head. "So, basically, this is your internet? Do I need to clear my browser history before we start?" Her ears flicked in confusion. I do not know what that means. Good, I said quickly. Let's keep it that way. She touched the node, and light spilled into the chamber. Images spiraled around us, ships docking, workers moving through the corridors, shadows flickering where they shouldn't. And then, there. A figure cloaked in refracting light, neither elethary nor human in shape. Its limbs bent at wrong angles, its eyes glowing faintly blue. I sucked in a breath. Well. That's definitely not one of us. Celira's voice was a whisper. Third faction. The figure planted the hybrid device, then vanished into the walls themselves, as if melting into the structure of the ship. The images faded, leaving us in darkness except for the glow of the nodes. I exhaled slowly. So, alien saboteurs sabotaging aliens at a peace summit between aliens and humans. Perfect. Because this wasn't complicated enough already. Celira's eyes found mine, steady and unwavering. This changes everything. And though I tried to joke, the truth weighed heavy. If neither humans nor elethary were to blame, then both were being set up for a war neither of them had chosen. I didn't think the world ship could get louder, but the alarms that screamed through its halls proved me wrong. Crimson light pulsed from the walls, a heartbeat of panic, while the air vibrated with the sound of something enormous crawling through the living corridors. Celira and I ran, though ran might be too heroic a word for the way I flailed and stumbled after her graceful stride. Do not fall behind, she said without turning. Not to worry, I wheezed, I'll heroically collapse right behind you. We ducked into a side passage just as part of the wall liquefied and reshaped into something grotesque, one of the saboteurs stepping out of the ship's very flesh, its limbs bending the wrong way, its glowing eyes narrowing at us. Celira drew herself tall, calm as ice. You are the hand that seeks war where there should be peace. The creature hissed, its voice layered and wrong, like static tangled with whispers. I, meanwhile, grabbed the only object within reach, a glowing maintenance tool that looked suspiciously like a space-age spatula. Back off, I said, brandishing it. I've flipped worse things than you. The thing tilted its head, clearly unamused. It lunged, but Celira met it with a strike of her palm, sending ripples through its body as if she'd struck water. The creature staggered. I swung my glowing spatula with all the courage of a man who really didn't want to die, and by some miracle, it connected. The saboteur shrieked, its form collapsing back into the wall, swallowed by the ship itself. I stood there panting, spatula raised. Victory! And breakfast is served. Celira gave me a long, bewildered look, then actually smiled, just a little. You are absurd. Absurdly heroic, I corrected. But we didn't have long to bask. The council chamber awaited, and the truth needed to be shown. We raced back, carrying the recorded images of the saboteurs, every second precious as the elethary and human delegates teetered on the edge of breaking apart. When we burst into the chamber, arguments were already at a fever pitch. Elders shouted, human envoys demanded explanation, and someone had apparently fainted dramatically in the corner. Celira strode to the center, her voice ringing clear. Behold the true enemy. The images sprang to life, projected for all to see, the cloaked beings, their limbs too long, their eyes like shards of cold fire, their sabotage undeniable. The chamber fell into stunned silence. One elder whispered, not human. Not elethary. Clara, patched in through the comm, added, we've detected faint energy signatures across several systems. This faction has been moving in shadows for longer than we realized. The silence gave way to murmurs, then to questions, then, finally, to the one thing no one had expected. Agreement. For the first time since the summit began, elethary and humans looked at one another not as adversaries, but as potential allies against something larger than both of them. I let out a slow breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Well, I'll be damned. Diplomacy worked. And I didn't even have to bribe anyone with donuts. The hours that followed blurred together, treaties drafted, promises exchanged, old grudges set aside for a greater cause. When it was done, the council chamber no longer felt like a battlefield, but like the fragile beginnings of something better. Later, in the quiet glow of the world ship's observation deck, Celira and I stood side by side, watching stars spill across the void. She turned to me, her long ears catching the light, her gaze steady. "When I first saw you, I wept. I did not understand why. Now I know, it was because some part of me recognized the path we would walk together." I swallowed hard, unsure whether to make a joke or just let the moment be. "So I compromised." "You mean you foresaw me saving the day with a spatula?" Her laugh was soft, real. "Perhaps not that detail." The silence that followed wasn't heavy, it was comfortable. For once, I didn't feel the need to fill it with nervous chatter. I realized then how much had changed. When I first boarded this ship, I was a diplomat who hid behind humor, terrified of saying the wrong thing. Now, after everything, the tears, the sabotage, the spatulas, I felt braver. Not fearless, never that, but braver. "Marcus," Celira said quietly, "you are not what I expected a human diplomat to be. Good different, I hope." Her eyes softened. "The best kind." We stood there, two souls from different worlds, connected not by treaties or necessity, but by something deeper. And as the world ship carried us toward a future uncertain but shared, I found myself thinking that maybe, just maybe, peace wasn't impossible after all. I leaned on the railing, letting the stars wash over me. "You know," I said, "I was really hoping for a quiet assignment this year. Maybe a posting on Mars with a coffee machine that doesn't try to explode." Celira tilted her head. "Would you prefer that to this?" I looked at her, at the vastness of space beyond, at the strange and wonderful mess of it all. And for once, I didn't need to joke. Not in a million years.